Laura, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Koch,
Yeah.
Commissioner Sill,
Here.
Commissioner Chung,
Here.
Chair Ross,
Here.
and Vice Chair Wilson will be absent this afternoon.
Very good. Thank you for that, Laura. Welcome everybody to the ASCC meeting of January 10th, 2022, our first meeting of the year. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's a sunny day out, so
Yeah.
everything's wonderful. We have a fairly short agenda today. Before we get started, I'll open oral communications and invite anyone who's with us today to speak on any subject that's on their minds, understanding that we won't be in a position to discuss it unless it's on the agenda. So this moment is for non-agendized items. So if you're interested in speaking, please virtually raise your hand and Laura will call on you.
We have Charles Beeler.
All right, Charles, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. We actually just moved to Portola Valley last month, so glad to be here, enjoying it so far.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't think this is the right committee, but to be honest, given everyone's remote, we've had our time figuring it out. We had over the holidays an oak tree that was leaning pretty far over anyway, but collapsed during the rains. And I'm sure it's large enough to qualify as a protected tree. And honestly, was having a really hard time from the website figuring out the process to go through to get it removed. That hopefully doesn't take several months since it's lying across part of the backyard. So I apologize, guys. I don't think this is the right committee. I've been trying to sort that out, but would love just getting pointed to the right people to try to figure out how to deal with the tree. So thank you.
Sure. Well, first of all, welcome to town.
Thanks. No, we live nearby, but we love being up in the hills, the trails, and the whole ecosystem. So we're excited to be here.
Great. And you're right, this isn't probably the correct venue, but nevertheless, you're getting connected with staff here and they will be able to help you offline with your tree emergency. And given that it's fallen over, you probably don't need the same type of permit that you would if it were still standing. But I'll let Laura give you information about how to get that handled. Laura, do you have some advice?
Yeah, Charles, if you would email the planning and building staff, and the best way to do that is planbuild, PLANBUILD @portolavalley.net, and let them know that your oak tree fell and you just need to go through the process, and Carol will help you with that.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great. All right, bye-bye. Laura, anybody else?
There are no other hands up.
Okay. Well, let's move on to agenda item number 1. This is new business. It's an architectural and site development review for a new horse barn, corral, site development permit, a significant tree removal, and new landscaping. This is at 270 Mapache Drive, the property of David and Jane Pecha. I hope I pronounced that right. And Jake Garcia, who's with us somewhere. There you are, Jake. Appears to have a presentation. Please go ahead, Jake.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Chair. The item before you tonight is a request for consideration to recommend approval for an architectural review and site development permit for a new horse barn, corral, and new landscaping at 270 Mapache Drive to the Planning Commission. The 108,900 square foot lot is zoned residential estate and is an interior lot along Mapache Drive. The property is surrounded on all sides by single-family residential located in the same zoning district. The lot is gradually sloped uphill at the front and is moderately sloped downhill at the rear of the property. There is an existing single-story main residence and storage shed attached by an existing carport. These existing structures are proposed to remain. The applicant is proposing to construct a 128 square foot horse barn and 1,180 square foot fence enclosed horse corral area that is partially covered by an overhang roof structure and attached to the new barn. The proposed floor area increase is well within what is permitted for the site, and the applicant is also proposes to replace and expand the front and rear patio areas with a concrete slab pavement. Rear patios are to include concrete seat walls and a path that leads out to a new fire pit area. The project also proposes an 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road with 13-foot wide trailer turnaround area that extends off the existing driveway to the rear of the property for access to the proposed horse barn and corral area at the rear of the lot. New landscaping made entirely up of native plants is proposed, primarily at the rear of the property near the new patio space and along rear property lines. Some minimal planting is proposed at the front of the main residence, and no significant trees are proposed for removal. We'll go through that more thoroughly later on in the presentation. And a total of 1,685 cubic yards of soil is planned to be cut or filled associated with the project in order to construct the proposed site improvements. Starting first with the proposed barn and corral area. On your screen are the elevations representing the proposed design of the small building structure and attached metal panel fencing. The proposed materials and colors would be consistent with the town's design guidelines and include exterior finishes of Grange Hall shown on the left for the fascia and the color chocolate milk for the trim shown on the right. The roof is proposed to be a gabled wood frame roof with shingles in the color autumn blend as shown on your screen. Here again is the existing site plan at the top of your screen and proposed site plan at the bottom. Please note the new patio area is located at the front and rear of the main residence, including a path leading out to the newly proposed fire pit area and the 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road and trailer turnaround area to access the rear of the property. The project proposes 6,311 square feet of new landscaping. Plantings are proposed in natural groupings throughout the site and include minimal planting at the front of the main residence, planting around the rear of the residence, and planting for additional screening near the rear corner of the property. Landscaping is proposed to be vegetated entirely with native plants, and the project proposes to utilize 67% of the maximum allowed water allowance. Here is a breakdown of the site development and grading. The project proposes 1,685 cubic yards of soil movement, which is subject to site development permit at the Planning Commission level. The grading is proposed for the new horse barn, corral, and seasonal dirt road driveway. The plans propose to move soil from the middle section of the property to fill in at the rear of the property to allow for a level surface for the horse barn and corral area. And the proposed horse barn and corral area is approximately 174 feet from the rear of the existing house. So the seasonal dirt road that's being proposed would connect the existing house and driveway to the new horse barn and corral area. As such, the Portola Valley Municipal Code 18.56.010 defines impervious surface, and the town's website includes the guiding interpretation of impervious surfaces to be surfaces that will not allow or will greatly reduce the penetration of water into the ground. These surfaces include concrete, asphalt, bricks, paving stones, swimming pools, turf stone, plastic sheeting, compacted gravel and rock areas, any gravel or decomposed granite areas or paths wider than 4 feet, and corrals and similar surfaces. Additionally, if the property has an exceptionally long driveway, that portion of the driveway which is further than 100 feet from the residence would be considered exempt. The applicant proposes an 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road with a trailer turnaround that extends from the existing driveway to the newly proposed horse barn and corral structure. The seasonal dirt road and turnaround area is 4,536 square feet in area and has not been included in the impervious surface calculation totals by the applicant. If the applicant were to include the dirt road and trailer access area into the impervious surface area, it would exceed the maximum allowed. And staff requests the ASCC's determination as to whether the seasonal dirt road should be included in the impervious surface calculation, and has provided an analysis of the seasonal dirt road and impervious surface within the staff report. Moving on to the public comment, staff has sent out a notice to all property owners within 300 feet of the project in advance of the planning commission, or in advance of the ASCC meeting, and no additional comments were received by staff since the publication of the report. That ends the staff presentation. Both the town staff and applicant team are available for any questions by the ASCC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jake. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I have one question, and maybe I just didn't read it correctly. Is there no lighting associated with the new barn?
That is correct. There's no lighting being proposed.
That's it.
Al or Kenny?
Yeah, I have a question. I guess it's probably more for staff. Assuming that we go along with saying that the seasonal dirt road is not impervious surface, is there some way that we could guarantee that at some later date that let's say that the owners or some new owners did a big redo of the house, I want to make sure that they wouldn't then be able to say, well, you know, really that road was impervious, and say, oh yeah, I want to grandfather in all this extra impervious space. You know, is there some way to make sure that every project in the future, if this one counts it as pervious, nobody else in the future gets to count it as impervious?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it would be appropriate to make sure that the designation is clearly on the plans. So if the project were approved by Planning Commission, that would be reflected into the record. The building permit plans are oftentimes the best place to keep those records, because people pull them, you know, if they come in to do future projects, and staff is naturally going to look at them
Okay.
for future projects.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Kenny, do you have any questions?
Just a reminder of what the siding material is meant to be for the barn. I see the color description and such, but I'm having trouble finding the material.
It's a plywood material.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And Jake, you mentioned that are no significant trees to be removed. The thumbnail description of the project indicates that there is significant tree removal. So has that been changed since the description was written?
That is correct. There are no significant trees removed in the plans that have been presented here.
Great. All right. Thank you. Carter,
Through the
do you
chair.
have, oh, yes.
Jake, could you show me where the fill is going to be on the map?
Yes, let me share my screen.
Thanks.
So there is some cut being proposed for at the mid portion of the site, and to be placed at the location of the horse barn and corral area, to make it level, as it's the existing site conditions show that it's downsloped, and so they'll be adding fill there to allow for a level surface. And in the second to last page in the plan set, there is a cross-sectional showing an example of this site development and soil cut and fill.
Great. Thank you very much.
And one last question, Jake. I gather from the presentation that there will be no soils off haul. It's all just moving around on the site. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's no off haul. There is a proposed import of soil.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? It's not. Carter, do you have anything to add?
Just that, we've really tried to develop this as a relatively, minimal project, to allow, Jane and, David to, have a place for, their horse and their ponies, for the kids. Westridge and particularly Portola Valley historically has been very supportive of horse facilities. But the ground does need to be a little more level than what it is today. And we're moving ground from one part of the site to the other part of the site and bringing in some import to complete that. The barn is as minimal as it can be, with just a tack room and a feed room, and a covered, essentially a loafing shed, is what we call it in the horse community. The driveway is intended to be pervious. It's a seasonal kind of access road when it isn't wet. Trying to keep it simple. Look forward to your approval. Look forward to your questions first.
Thank you, Carter. Commissioners, any questions for Carter? Al?
No questions.
Okay, Kenny,
No question.
Megan, Craig, do you have any questions? I have one. Carter, do you think that the applicant would be comfortable with a restriction that's stated on the building permit plans that would not allow in the future any sort of paving of that seasonal dirt road?
I think that that would be an overreach, because there is some allowed impervious surface area that could be developed.
Mhm.
I think that the limitation of the existing impervious surface limit is probably adequate, rather than limiting what they could and couldn't do on that dirt road. The dirt road by itself is really, because of its shape, likely to be two strips, tire strips, until it gets to the turnaround. So while it's indicated to be 11 feet wide, grass and stuff is going to grow up in between, and then the tire strips are going to be more compact, and legitimately could be counted as impervious surface, even if they weren't gravel. So I'm ambivalent about a restriction. Jane and David are on the call as panelists, so they could answer that question as well. I do think that the overall impervious surface limit is probably the real limiting factor.
Sure. The reason I asked the question is the concern that either the present property owners or probably more likely future owner could buy a couple of trucks of gravel and not go through a permit process. So even if there was a restriction stated in the plans, somebody not applying for a permit wouldn't come to the staff's attention unless it was through a neighbor's outreach or something. But anyway, that's why I mentioned it's pretty easy to get some truckfuls of gravel delivered.
Yeah, I guess in light of of the issue, I think the alternative before we go to the planning commission might be to develop what those tire strips would be, and the turnaround, and clarify for the planning commission what the impervious surface would be at that point. I mean, the physical ramifications of it would be would not be different than what you would be recommending approval for today. But if you look at two 1.5 foot wide strips, tire strips, to go from the garage area down to the turnaround versus 11 feet wide, that'd be probably 30% less. I mean 60% less or 70% less impervious surface, and it would accomplish all of what the Petches would ever want, and
Mhm.
probably any future owner would ever want, because there wouldn't be any reason that anybody would ever want it to be, paved in a more substantial way.
Well, I think that's an excellent suggestion to have that calculation available in case the question comes up to Planning Commission.
Sure. That's an easy thing for us to do.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions for Carter? All right. I'll.
Dave, Jane, did you
Yes.
have anything you wanted to bring up?
Just that we appreciate your consideration, and we're excited. We've been here for 10 years, hoping and wishing and planning for something like this, and we're finally here. So we love our community, we love our neighbors, and we want to make sure to take care of the land here. And so we just really appreciate your consideration.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. I'll open the public comment portion of this agenda item and invite anybody from the public who's here to address this item to speak. Raise your hand virtually, and Laura will call your name.
There are no hands up. There is one person on the phone. If you wish to speak, *9 to raise your hand. And there are no hands up.
All right. I'll close the public hearing and open this for discussion and recommendations from commissioners. And Kenny, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I think that this looks like a reasonable project to me. I appreciate the scale of it. I think it doesn't seem crazy or overly extravagant. I think the design intent for it to be minimal, that translates through. That's what I read from the drawings. I appreciate that it's the new barn is fairly centrally located. It seems to be considerate of the neighbors, and that there isn't a massive amount of cut and fill. I think I can understand the fill that is being requested. The impervious surface, it does seem like a large amount to be adding. I think the property is so large that the biggest detrimental effects seem to be likely to be local to the site during the worst rainstorms. So that's sort of, it's on the implementation, I guess, in terms of making sure that that's drained well. That's the applicants would be self-motivated to get that right. The siding, I think we sort of have a duty to mention that there is, if the applicants aren't aware, there's a new ordinance that likely doesn't apply to this project because of when it entered the planning phase, but that new construction require Class A exterior materials for non-combustibility in the case of a fire. And so we would just mention that and make the applicants aware of I think the spirit and the reasons behind that are probably really clear and understandable, and to just suggest that you move for such a permanent structure, for what's intended to be a permanent structure, towards non-combustible siding. It fits within the budget. I think you can make it look exactly the same way that you want it to look, and use non-combustible siding. Aside from that, I wish the applicants luck in achieving what they're trying to achieve here. It looks reasonable to me.
Thank you, Kenny. Al, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Kenny. I think that this is an excellent proposal. I think that it's cited well. You know, it's not going to impact neighbors. No new lighting, no trees being taken out. I think that the earth movement is reasonable given the site and what's being done. I think it's great to see something going on to support horses. I just like what Carter was saying. I think that we're losing a little bit of that in Portola Valley, and I think that's an important part of the history. So I'm thrilled to see somebody actually making an effort to maintain or create that opportunity. My one concern was really the issue around the seasonal dirt road, but with Carter's explanation about really, if you were gonna count any of it as pervious, it would just be, or impervious, it would just be the tire tracks. I'm a lot more comfortable with that, so I'm not too concerned about that, and I think that it's just a good proposal. I think the landscape plan is very appropriate, I think that the analysis of the findings from the staff is good, and I agree with that. So I'm completely in favor of it.
Great, thank you all. Megan.
Yeah, hi. I understand why this horse corral and barn are put in the back of the property. And that is why this long driveway, dirt path would need to be created. The front slope is quite extreme. And if you had to create an environment there for the horses, that would certainly cause a lot of disruption to the soil and impact neighborhoods, even though we would all love to see your horses out in the front. So I understand the program here of why you're moving it back there. So I'm comfortable with the dirt road and its extent. The materials, I mean, if you can pull it out, it would be great to even have a different roof material too, not just the siding, because that actual composite roof is not fire resistant. It's, or it's fire resistant, but it's not non-flammable, right? There's different designations. And since it's a smaller structure, maybe that is something within your budget that you can come up with. But of course, these are just recommendations at this point. But that would be safer for your animals and safer for your property and all your neighbors. I think the color choices are great, and I can absolutely support the findings.
Great. Thank you, Megan. I don't have anything to add, really. Looks like an excellent project. I would suggest that if the applicant wishes to change the siding and roofing materials, that they not be required to come through a full ASCC process. I think a single ASCC member could review and handle that change if it were to come up. I wouldn't want to burden this project with coming back in order to perhaps incentivize that thinking process a little bit, not make it hard on the applicant to do that. I think that all the required conditions of approval are easily met here with this application. I'm very comfortable with the grading and with the explanation of the seasonal dirt road. Don't have any issues with that. So I'm in favor of this proposal as well. And I would invite commission member to make a recommendation to planning that we can vote on. Anybody up to the challenge? Al, you're usually the
Sure.
first one to jump in on this.
All right, I will propose that we recommend to the Planning Commission that they approve this project.
All right. Is there a second for that?
Do we want to add a dispensation for changing the materials to comply with the new town resolution?
Al, you're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Great. All right, that's added in. So Kenny, is that a second?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Looks unanimous to me with one absence.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for
Thank
bringing it,
you.
Carter.
Yeah,
And,
looks good.
And
Thank
good
you
luck
very
with your
much.
Thank you
project.
very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
If I could, through the chair.
Yes, Carter, go ahead.
Jake and Laura, a procedural or calendar, a question regarding when we could be before the planning commission.
Tentatively, not confirmed, tentatively, February 2nd is the next available meeting.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Looking at the agenda, I see that we have our usual commission reports is item 2. Does anybody have any activity to report since our last meeting? I think that was the second Monday of December.
I can talk about wildfire.
Yes, please do.
So my subcommittee has been working on creating these community, small community test programs, let's call it. Okay, so the idea is we get a group of 10 to 15 homes in a street or community, smaller groups, that we can do this test pilot program where we have someone come in and assess their properties, whether it be Woodside Fire or an outside source, come in through and evaluate their properties and give recommendations on how they can become more fire safe, and also provide them with a list of contractors who may be able to help them with their work, or handymen if it's just a smaller job, and also encourage community involvement to help fellow neighbors who maybe are unable to do the work on their own, and to have these programs go through possibly around a chipping program that we set up, whether it's with the biannual chipping program that's already existing, or if we can have Woodside, which we've been talking to Woodside Fire a lot about this, come in and do a special chipping, time for them, and to see how this works, and to see how responsive the neighbors are, to see how effective this program could be. And this could be a model, and to show the rest of the community that this can be done, because it can seem overwhelming and daunting and expensive and scary for a homeowner to have someone walk on their property and tell them all these things they need to do. So that is underway right now. I will be leaving this committee, as you guys know, because I have too many other projects going on, and now I'm leading the fundraising for Woodside High School foundation auction, and I'm just overcommitted. But I will stay on as kind of a liaison with this, as Jeff Alfs will be as well, even though he's leaving, and Sarah Wernikoff is going to take his position there. But we're both going to continue to discuss this pilot program and hopefully see it come to fruition in the spring.
Great. Megan, does that thought about the kind of advice and referrals relate to both the site and the structures on the site?
Yes.
So for example, what kind of roofing would be better for this house, and who could do it?
And most likely, those kind of extreme changes we would not expect to see, but things like changing the venting, right? The venting materials and their, it's not permeability, but well, actually it kind of is, how much a flame or an ash could get through those vents, things like that. And also gutter management, right? So, telling someone they need to redo their roof could be a suggestion that's made, but that's quite an extreme. But it could be a lot of brush management and just removal of plantings nearby the structure, those kind of things. But that it's intimidating. People are nervous to do this because it does seem daunting, not only for one's own self to do on their own, but also very expensive. And also the fear that if Woodside Fire comes onto your property and you might have something that doesn't, you know, conform to some regulation, that you're not going to be in trouble for it. This is just someone coming in to show you how to best protect your property. And then also with this, we'd love to see too, is if after, let's say, a neighborhood on Canyon Drive, okay, could be a nice, small, compact, easily, you know, neighbors, already a very neighborly community, to see if they've done some changes and improvements to their hardening, if their insurance has actually cared about that. You know, so there's a lot to learn from this.
Right. Well, it's interesting, and I hope it comes to fruition in a way that it's a program usable by people. It seems to me that maybe vetting in an ongoing process of vetting vendors and contractors might be among the most difficult components of that.
Absolutely. And so we're not going to recommend anyone use anyone, but we'll give them a list that we know of to choose from, whether it's arborists to, you know, the actual like fuel mitigation companies that we've spoken of in the past, you know, the bigger ones, or just even somebody's handyman that's been able to do it, or even sharing your local gardener who can clear things for you, you know, just getting a pool of resources for people.
Well, worthy effort. Anybody else want to follow up with thoughts or questions on Megan's item?
Yeah, Megan, I was wondering if you looked at the fire safe communities, because it sounds like you're in some ways replicating what fire safe does.
We're talking exactly with them as well. Yes. Yeah. So this is with who's on this committee? It's MJ. It is Jeff Alfs. We have quite a few on here. Hold on, let me just look. And we're just trying to do this test program specifically through these small communities, and just to get information from it, to see how will everyone participate. You know, let's say you choose 10 homes, maybe only a couple will. If you make the chipping program available on an off date other than the designated times, will that encourage people to do it? It's just to hopefully encourage our community to work together and help each other, share resources. But yes, all those committees are being talked with, as well as different ones in Woodside. We're also working with the neighborhood watch kind of groups, because those are also neighborhood communication. We haven't designated what streets, let's say, they're going to exist on, but that's the discussion right now.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Fire Safe is a program, right? It's a national program. I mean, that you get a community together, and they have people. I mean, and so, you know, within WPV Ready, one of the communities just became a Fire Safe community, and I think PV Ranch is a Fire Safe community as well.
Yes, and that's the designation that we'd love for these streets groups to advertise, right? Like, look at what we did. You guys can do it too, right? Absolutely, to become this fire safe community. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying it's a program, right? I mean, they've got a whole set of things that you do to get officially labeled.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a little like our conservation.
It's like a checklist.
Backyard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you can do that. You could have Woodside Fire come out and look at it. You could have some of these other companies come out and look at it. You know, there are many community members here that can't even walk their own properties really and see what they need to do, or just don't have the time, you know, to do this checklist. So to have someone come out and, you know, all of these, the support we're creating, I think is going to be so valuable. You know, if everyone can do at least a little something and help each other out, it could be super beneficial for our entire town.
Yeah, just hopefully you can coordinate with WPV Ready, because it seems like that's what they're already doing. So just so we don't end up doing.
Oh yeah. No, we're all in cahoots.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thanks for that report, Megan. Any other commissioners with reports? Doesn't sound like it. It wasn't a very active time, so I don't have anything. I don't think I spoke to anybody in the planning department during the last month, which is okay. I missed you all. All right. Well, let's close out commission reports then and move on to item 3. Oh, before we do, I'm sorry. If there are any members of the public who would like to comment on that agenda item, now's the time. Any hands up, Laura?
No, no hands up.
All right. Then I'll close the public hearing on commission reports and now move on to item 3, staff reports. Laura, what have you got?
Just a couple of announcements. It seems like it's been a long time with the holidays, but wanted to make sure people are aware that the Neely Winery application was approved after considerable conversation with the Planning Commission and the conditions of approval on that. And there was not an appeal of that decision. So that will not be going to the town council. So that Planning Commission decision is final. So we're finalizing those conditions and they'll be posted onto the town website. So I know that's an important thing that a lot of people have been tracking. Also related to the fire station, you'll recall that they needed to make some additional changes to their landscaping to meet the recommendations of the ASCC. So staff has been working with them on that. And so we'll be following up. I think off the top of my head, the condition is to have 2 ASCC members take a look at that. So that's going to be coming soon. In the next few weeks to a month, we'll be reaching out to ASCC members. In terms of the housing element update process, we have an important meeting coming up next week on the 18th of the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee at 4:30. We're going to be talking about fire safety in particular. We have a couple of guest speakers for that. We have the Community Development Director from the town of Paradise is coming to speak about some of the lessons learned and what she would impart her wisdom upon our housing element process. We have Zeke Lender, who is our fire safety consultant for the safety element. He's from Deer Creek Resources. He's a fire GIS mapping guru. So he's got some things to share. And then Don Bullard from Woodside Fire Protection District will be there, and the chief will be there if he's able to. So important meeting. You can attend via Zoom or it will be recorded and you can watch later if you want to do that. So we'll let you know when that comes out. But it'll be, I think, really interesting and good discussion when we get to that. So wanted to make sure that you're aware of it. And that's all. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anything's come up.
Thanks, Laura. Any
Laura,
questions?
do you know when we're going to get the final resolution for Neely?
No, honestly, when I get to the final, like just reading it and editing it and sending it to you.
Okay.
Commissioners, any questions for Laura?
No questions from me.
All right. I have one, or just to throw it out there, which is that at the next meeting, we should go through our election of officers process for chair and vice chair. As you know, Jane is currently vice chair. She's away this week. I will be away at our next meeting, but I do plan at this point to attend anyway via Zoom, since the only way you can tell where I am is if you see the same pictures on the wall behind me as you usually do. But I'll be in California, so I think it'll be legal. Is that right, Laura? As long as I'm in California?
You don't actually have to be in California now
Okay.
under the governor's order and the town council action. You just have to be available for the Zoom meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
So-
goodness, because I'm going to be on the road for the next meeting also, but I was planning on calling in, but I'm calling in from Utah, so.
Okay. That's right.
You
I
can,
heard you
as
were
long
going
as
to-
we're under the emergency orders that are allowed by the state and designated by the council. So we're still good.
Okay.
All right. And I assume there's no wind in sight on that emergency designation. Nobody's
No,
making plans at this point to return to in-person meetings.
we still have to get the equipment set up in the town, in the schoolhouse, I'm sorry. And so that will allow us to go to hybrid meetings when it's appropriate to do so. So obviously we were all hoping that would be soon. So it's both the timing, obviously, of this variant as well as the physical improvements that we need to make to the schoolhouse.
All right. Okay. If there aren't any other staff reports or questions about staff items.
I have a
Okay.
question on the subject of
Go ahead, Kenny.
the meetings. Is it possible to entertain a small, like, half-hour change in the meeting time? My wife has started a new job, and she started a new job in the fall, and the way things are sorting out, it's a little bit difficult for her with me having to bring the kids home before the meeting. If it were a half hour earlier, I could grab the kids after the meeting. And it wouldn't affect her work. So I was wondering if that was something that there was a process for considering.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a process, but I think it's worthy of considering. And I don't know, Laura, can you send out a poll, or are there staff constraints about this?
We should discuss it and put it on an agenda. So
Okay.
why don't I add it to the next meeting to discuss meeting times? And that
Great.
way, if you wanted to take an action, you would be able to.
All right.
So one thing I'm thinking about this though is if and when, I'm going to say when we go back to in-person meetings, I do recognize that the later meetings that we had might have been more suitable for all applicants to join.
Yes. That's a good
So
point.
if we were to go to a 3:30 meeting, that may be just very short term, because I do think the in-person would be needing people to travel to the site of the schoolhouse. Right? Am I wrong in thinking that most likely we're going to go back to later meetings again?
Well, I think it's a topic for discussion. This has been a little bit of a test case to see if people were available. So we'll have to use our judgment, and the ASCC can decide if you'd like to go back to the evening meetings. I mean, we found generally this whole time people have been available, but what we don't know is that it was because it was possible to do it over Zoom. So we'll have to talk about when we're in a hybrid format, we'll still be in Zoom. And so we might be able to have, for example, all my planners wouldn't necessarily have to come to the schoolhouse. They could still present from home. Applicants
Right.
may still present. So we'll have to work through what's going to work best for ASCC.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yes, so not everyone needs to travel to Portola Valley.
Right.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks.
And we're going to have to see if it works, because ASCC is a certain kind of meeting, right? And we don't want to give up the best parts of the ASCC discussion. Do you know what I mean? The kind of hands-on, practical part of it. And so we'll have to, I think, just kind of see how it goes and decide what makes the most sense in terms of format and time.
Yep. Great. Well, let's put maybe a little bit broader discussion item on the next meeting agenda of what a hybrid meeting might look like, in addition to when it might be held. I kind of miss handling the materials board. It's often helpful to actually see, rather than a photograph of the materials that are going to be used, to actually handle them. So there are some things that an in-person meeting, you can't replace with a Zoom meeting. Anyway, yeah, that'd be great on the next agenda.
Through the chair.
Yes, Craig, go ahead.
I would just ask you guys to consider the impact on the public, because I mean, you guys have meetings like this is, for me even, it's really hard for me to make this time. Like this is right in the middle of my workday. So obviously the applicant has to show up because they want to get your approval. But I don't know if you're going to get, I'm worried you're limiting public participation by having it in the middle of people's workday. So just something to think about when you have that conversation.
Yeah, we will certainly consider that. I was formerly a member of the corresponding review agency in Palo Alto for several years, and we met at 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes the meetings went 4 or 5 hours. So that was an extreme burden on members of the public. So I understand that issue really well. And we'll certainly include that in our discussion. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item, the staff report item? Anybody showing up, Laura?
Yeah, we do have a hand up, phone number ending in 7562.
Very good. 7562, go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the ASCC and the chair. Thank you again. This is Caroline Vertonghen. Some departments start to recognize my phone number. First of all, Happy New Year. And I want to thank you again for all your time and efforts to represent the residents and our values. You have no idea how important that is to us. I do have some questions. For me, this is a learning process. I find it very interesting, and that's why I attend all these meetings. But I do have some questions for the director of the planning director, Laura Russell. One is on the Neely project. So that has been approved, and I would like to understand when it was approved. And I know there is no appeal, but there's several committees who have not participated, and one of them is a traffic committee. How will this come forward? Then I have the fire station. There were some conditions. I believe it was Planning Commissioner Tark who wanted to have a soil inspection. Has that happened, and will that come forward? Then what about the 214 Grove project that was listed, I believe, on October 11th, and then it was going to come on a later date. So sorry if I'm mixing up Planning Commission, ASCC. Sometimes it's very, it's not clear to us. And I forgot one thing on the Neely project, and perhaps you can respond to this privately, but we have asked about the sewer system. Were they connected to sewer or the septic? And we got conflicting answers. I believe that the planning director said they are now on septic, and that the other one, and that Neely said they were still on sewer. So these are my comments and questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline.
Caroline, if you want to send me a direct email, I can give you more detailed answers. But the Neely CUP was approved on December 1st. The Bicycle Pedestrian Traffic Advisory Committee did have an opportunity to review the traffic study, so that step did take place. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on the question about the fire station. 214 Grove was approved by the ASCC at a field meeting that was held after the meeting that was held on Zoom. So that project was approved. And I'd be happy to try to answer the rest of your questions if you wanted to send them to me over email.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Laura. All right, I'll close staff report items. We have 2 sets of minutes to review and approve. Do we have a quorum for each of these? Let's take item 4 first. That's the meeting of October 11th. Was everybody here in attendance at that meeting?
I was, let's see, Kenny was, but then I think the third person was Jane.
Right. So without,
I was on an airplane.
right. And I think I was out of town at that meeting. So without Jane, I don't think we have a quorum yet for the October 11th meeting minutes.
I want to reflect into the record. Legally, you are allowed to vote on them.
Okay.
The commission's practice has been to abstain if you weren't at the meeting. So it's your decision. If you wish to vote on them now, you can. But it has been the practice to wait until those parties are there, so we could hold them until the next meeting if you'd like.
I don't think there's any harm in holding it. Occasionally we'll get a comment from a member of the public on the minutes. I don't know that that would affect the voting. I'd also say that I can't recall a time when there's been any significant corrections or any no votes on an approval, but let's just go ahead and hold that until the next meeting. How about the meeting of December 13th, our last meeting? I think we have a quorum for that one.
Yep.
Are there any corrections or comments from commissioners?
They looked fine to me.
Yep, I'd say they're the usual, very accurate minutes.
Right. Mhm.
Do we have a, let's see, Laura, I should open public comment before we vote, I
Yes.
think, on this. Yes, so I'll invite members of the public to speak about those minutes if we have anyone who would like to.
Caroline would like to speak.
Caroline, go ahead.
I apologize. I don't want to speak. It's just that I remembered that I had not lowered my hand,
Ah, all
but
right.
then somebody else lowered my hand. So sorry
All
for
right.
the confusion. Thank you.
No
I was
problem.
trying to help. Thank you.
No
Sorry,
problem.
Caroline.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 13th.
I'll
Okay.
approve the minutes from December 13th.
Thank you, Megan.
I'll second.
Second from Al. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. That's our last item of business. So we'll adjourn and see you all on, is it the 23rd? No, anyway, the next meeting,
24th.
24th, 2 weeks from today.
Awesome.
All
Okay,
right.
Happy
great.
New Year, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good week.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.